20 minutes. Yes, you don't mind if this is recorded, right? Just the audio? Okay. Um 20 minutes, 25 minutes tops. Okay? Take it
Thank,
away.
thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Jean, and I am a real alcoholic. And I have been through this process by the grace of God and a couple of big book step study sponsors, completed steps 1 through 9 to the best of my ability, and practicing steps 10, 11, and 12 to the best of my willingness. I know as you or every time, God Almighty, every time we go through these steps, it's something just pops up in my head, and I'm like, oh my God. Um, I grew up in an alcoholic home, and I remember the first time my mother took me to visit my dad in prison. And she didn't have time to sew buttons on her blouse in the back, so she had these safety pins. So of course she had to undo all those safety pins as she's going through this area where, it would set off alarms. So um and I also remember my father as I got older, now I'm in my teens, him having to go to Bridgewater Mental State Institution. I say this when I first came into AA, and my first group at that time was the Snug Harbor group in Quincy, Massachusetts. And we went on commitments, and of course, jails and institutions. And that reality hit me like a ton of bricks. Because before coming into AA, because I was so delusional and defiant, I just could not, would not, and did not know how to see the truth of this disease of alcoholism. I had no idea it was a threefold, a disease. Once I picked up the drink, that was it. All bets were off. I had this physical allergy. Now I've got this mental obsession, and I did a lot of controlled drinking. And I knew the further away I was from a drink, the crazier I got. And I could go from one extreme to the other, petrified to get out of bed, or I could be right in your face, one or the other. And but I had no idea about a spiritual malady, this separation from the God of my understanding. And I had no idea that this is what my dad was going through until on that commitment in Snug Harbor, we went to a prison, and I was like, oh my God, that reality just was like, wow. Um, when I, by the grace of God, when I got to Big Book Step Study process, I got to hear the truth. Now, there was a couple of people in my group that had gone through the Big Book Step, and I couldn't peg it, but for some reason, I I knew there was something very different about them. Now, there were some people in my group who didn't go through the process, but yet they went through the steps in a different way, or in another way. And but they all seem to have this centeredness or this calmness, which I just didn't have. My brain was racing constantly. And I'd wake up in the middle of the night, or I'd wake up having really just terrific nightmares to the point I'd be breaking out in a cold sweat, and couldn't go back to sleep. Um, but I took suggestions, some that I really hung on to dear life, really. Asking God for help, getting on my knees, which no way I wasn't going to do that. Um, Eventually I was to do that. Pain and desperation are such great motivators. And also asking God to have that obsession and the desire for a drink and a drug to be removed. How many times a day? It doesn't, yes, I was told, as upon awakening, just ask God for help and going to bed to thank God. Anything in between, ask God for help, or pick up the phone, get to a meeting, call your sponsor. And some things I did, some things I did not. It's interesting that my brother Bruce, I was 2 years sober. He gives me this, I'm talking how far back. For Christmas, he gives me an answering machine. He said, "We'd really like to know how you're doing." Terrible at getting back, isolated. It took a great deal of pain for me to get out of myself to pick up the phone to call somebody. But when I did, I did. And getting to meetings. Now, eventually, and really, thank God, when I got to my first Big Book Step Study meeting, I was to notice those two individuals that were my Snug Harbor group. They did and I was just like, oh, okay. My first meeting, Big Book Step Study, was on fear. The gentleman's name was Russell. He had salt and pepper hair. I don't know why I remember that, but his message had hit me so. Everything he said about fear from the moment he was a kid, he remembered his first fear of being laughed at. And I was like, fear of failure. And so he had these fears. He gave me, gave experiences, and everything, just alarm bells ran. And that's when I was like, okay, I have to have this thing because I'm hearing the truth. And I wanted desperately what you people had. So I went through the whole 16 weeks, got a sponsor, and immediately started doing the reading, and then did the third step. Went on to the fourth step, writing, getting down to causes and conditions. And this is where I was developing a relationship with God. I had no idea that I was doing that, although I was suggested, even before picking up the pen, to say the third step prayer. And every time I faltered, say the third step prayer. Every time I moved away, say, and coming back, say the third, bringing God in. And now this is where Jean, and now we're talking about the tip of the iceberg, is starting to get to know who she is and how she worked. Especially when I came to that fourth, it's not a column, but to see my selfishness, and I was told to write down selfishness without judgment. Now the self-seeking, the actions that I took to get what I wanted, and then a list of lies that I was telling myself. It was a number of lies: lying, cheating, stealing, and not just actual, but the lies I told myself, how I cheated myself and how I allowed things to be stolen from me on this spiritual path. And, I was great at the dishonesty of omission. I kept very things close to the vest. I would edit, not out and out lie, but I would edit. My expectations of you, if I put you on a pedestal, heaven forbid if your foot faltered. And it was like, I'm done with you. I became judge, jury, and executioner. Expressing feelings as a kid, I stuffed it. I thought I could read minds. That was not I did a lot of controlling because I thought I knew what was best for everybody. I thought I knew what was best for me, and playing God. Again, judge, jury, and executioner. I had no idea that all these lies were driven by all these fears. The unknown, success, failure, fear of not being loved, fear of not being liked, fear of not getting what I want, fear of losing what I have. I think I may have skipped one or two, but noticing all of that, seeing all those flaws in my makeup, seeing those mistakes was really what started to change me. And now seeing my fears, how self-reliance has failed me. And now I'm getting to my sex conduct, which I was like dreading until my sponsor, okay, come on, I'll help you do one or two. And I was like, okay. So now, I could no longer see myself as a victim. I could no longer hold myself up as that. Regardless of what has happened to me as a child, because I took all that stuff with me. And a lot of how I reacted to life, I thought was protecting me. It was no longer working. So now I'm giving this to my sponsor. Now I go to 6 and 7, the two shortest paragraphs, and yet powerful. Now am I ready? Am I willing to have God remove? Now I have to humble myself because now it's no longer in my hands. I still have to put things in action, but it's no longer in even though I thought when I did 6 and 7, I've got this, I'll take care of it. No, 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 no. I really thought that I was going to coast with 6 and 7 until I got into the real world. The next, I think it was the next day or the day after, gone into work, confronted with a customer who was not happy. And I am like, oh, calling my boss and he's ranting at me and she's like, "Meh, meh, meh." And I'm like, oh, I had to do a turnaround, calling my sponsor. She's chuckling. And I'm like, oh God, I wish she would chuckle. All right, I get it. What's my character defect? I keep thinking I can take I can take care of this. I can figure this. It's like, no, you leave that with God. You ask God for help. Like, okay, I get it. Now I'm going on to the step that really, just for me, was so life-saving, is the only way I can put it. And that was making my list. I had to go on to another sponsor, thank God for this woman. And now I'm making my amends. Wow. To admit my wrongs to somebody, to make those financial amends, to make those phone calls and to be turned away, say no, no thanks, to write letters only to have them sent back. Okay. But have other people come in and say, yes, we'll make a date, to hear me out and to ask them, did I leave anything out? And have a sibling say to me, yeah, there's a few things. Like, okay, what is it? And to sit there and go, oh my God, I am so sorry. How thoughtless. I really didn't take your feelings into consideration whatsoever. I'll tell you, making those amends, again, really cleaning my side of the street really is still of course, into step 10, when I make an amends, because we continue to do this work, because I don't want, when I go to bed at night, I like to go to bed with a clear conscience, even though, yes, I review in step 11. because I don't like to leave anything. Because when I wake up in the morning, for me, that's a clean slate. And I've had experiences not doing steps 10 and 11 and having experiences doing steps 10 and 11. And when I wake up, immediately thinking of me, hit the ground running, I keep hitting a wall after wall after wall after wall. And it's like, okay, all right. And in that moment, I have to ask God for help. I have to be in that moment with God. I have to spend that time. Okay, let me review. Let me start over. And I can always start over. It doesn't matter what time of the day. But in the morning, yes, I have to invite God in. And now, any moment of the day where I start to feel unease, um, restless, or irritable, if there's any fear, anxiety, nervousness, okay, God, where's this coming from? Help me to see what this is. And help me to have the willingness, because a lot of times I can still stuff things and say, I'll take care of it later. No, 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 no. When I do ask God for help, I'll tell you, it's immediate. Sometimes I have to keep asking for willingness and asking for willingness, but eventually it comes. It can come from a phone call. It can come from me making a phone call, or a situation crops up and it just totally turns me another way. And it's like, oh, my perspective has now just changed. I'm lighter. Now I can be of service, because that's my primary purpose, is to be of service to God and all fellows. And what's my service? To sponsor, to be in touch with my sponsor, to bring it out into the real world. The real world. Wow. You know, I never wanted to deal with reality, which is, yes, drinking and drugging helped me. That, drinking, I remember a woman saying, I was looking for God at the bottom of the bottle. I thought that was my solution. It was not my solution. And I thought that was going to take me to my grave. And thank God it didn't. Um, that these steps are a gateway to the solution, and the solution is God. When I sponsor, and I have a young woman now, and a lot like me in respects that, no, she's not going to call till she's dangling, literally hanging on by a thread, and finally will call me. And I will listen, and I will say, so where are you in your writing? Just like the women who have sponsored me, even my sponsor, well, where is that coming from? Like, why would you think that? And why didn't you call me? She's like, okay, I understand. But it's this being of service that gets me out of myself. And I remember hearing a young woman say, I'm in this for me. And as soon as she said, I was like, yes, because this is my life here. I'm all in. When I give somebody my number, if they call me, great. If they just want to say, what's this all about? I'm all in. I can give you my experience, and I can give you my experience out of this book. That's what I can give you. If you don't call, okay, that's up to you. If we get to the third step, and I've taken women through the third step, and then not to hear from them again. And then others up to about and never hear. For me, I get to find more about myself and what I can do and what I can give. Now, if I don't have an answer, I can call my sponsor and see if she has an answer. Or I can say, you know what, maybe you want to talk to Mary or Sarah about that because I don't have that experience. But I'm all in it and I love it. I love sharing my experience, strength, and hope. And I love doing this work. Again, as somebody else says, now I have to bring it out into the world. And that can be difficult sometimes because I'm dealing with people. And I remember hearing somebody say something about, oh yeah, those people, they're earth people. I was like, what? Because yeah, they're not like us. They don't think, we don't think like them. And it is true. And I will hear some great stuff from earth people, on spirituality, on poetry, on myth. Thank you. Really great stuff. But yet, for me to hear the truth, I need to hear another alcoholic who has been through this process that has a solution. Great. So when I'm out and about in the world, and I start to feel a little restless, and I start to, there was one incident, I think it was last week. Somebody's honking their horn, they're up this guy's butt, and I don't even drive. I'm standing on the corner making all these criticisms and judgments. And then all of a sudden I hear this voice say, Jane, stop ruling the world. And I was like, before I can even get to that, where am I being selfish, dishonest, resentful, and fear? Doing that turnaround. And as soon as I did that, I was like, oh, now I come back into the real world. Now the sky is blue, the birds are chirping, and I go about my business. Whenever I can have that interaction with those earth people, or there's a conflict, I have to really practice to pause when agitated or doubtful. I have to really bring God into the picture. I'm not perfect. It's progress, not perfection, even though, yes, Bill talks about, but, we try to strive for perfection in the 12. For me, it's progress, not perfection. I have to keep it in the day and in the moment. And yeah, oh, mercy. I love doing this work. I really do. And I'm so grateful. And I never could understand when people would say, I'm so grateful for being an alcoholic. Because I get to do this work. I have a solution today that was given to me freely by another sick and suffering alcoholic who found a solution. So if you're writing, please keep writing. And if you're just checking this out, please keep coming back. And please, as somebody else I've heard say, please stay. Thank you.
Thank you so, so much.